There we go. We're good. We're good. We're all
Nice.
full.
Professor Lane told me that he wasn't
Great.
using his room no more.
Yeah, we are.
No worry.
All right, so we're gonna get started. Y'all are just gonna introduce your name and what side you are on. So I will start with you in the red over here.
We're afraid of this.
All right, my name is Nimak Avisi. I'm speaker number 4, and we're on the affirmative side of why the capital punishment should be abolished.
I'm Brendan Jimerson. I'm speaker number 3, and we're on the affirmative side.
I'm Andrew Gonzalez. I am speaker number 2, and we're on the affirmative side.
I'm Garrison Napier, I'm speaker number 1. We're on the affirmative side that the death penalty should be abolished.
Alright, let's say for y'all over here.
My name is Will Russell. I'm speaker number 2, and we are on the side of why the death penalty should not be abolished.
I'm Tyler Ellis. I'm speaker number 1, and we're on the negative side.
I'm Stephen Embley. Contention 1. Negative.
Okay,
I'm Isabella Costa, speaker number 4 for the negative side.
Alright, wonderful. So we are going to follow the public forum format that you guys have been practicing. So both of our first speakers will have 5 minutes, followed by a 2-minute crossfire. Our second speakers will both have 5 minutes as well, followed by another 2-minute crossfire. Our third will have a 5-minute speech, and it will be followed by a grand crossfire, and it will be 3 instead of 2 minutes. And both of our final focus speakers will also have 5 minutes. So we will jump right into it. We will start with the affirmative. First speaker, you're ready to go, and I will time you. I'll give you a heads up when you meet 30 seconds left of your speech, so you are free to go.
Do I need to stand up?
You can stand, sit, I don't mind.
Hi there, here are some of my team members are Andrew, Brenda, and Nima. The team and I will be affirming the proposition that the death penalty should be abolished. My team has assembled a substantial amount of research, and today we'll be using our findings to prove that the death penalty's consequences far outweigh its benefits. The framework for our argument is that executions don't always work. Capital punishment is at its core designed to kill an inmate for what's known as a capital crime. And most of the time, America's numerous execution methods do just this. They do it pretty well. But what happens if the execution doesn't work? What happens if someone survives their execution? To clarify, the term capital punishment refers to the death sentence given in court, and execution refers to how exactly the inmate is put to death. And there's a bunch of different methods to execution. There's hanging, there's lethal injection, there's electric chair, and these methods have evolved over the course of history, and the modern United States tries to make execution as quick and humane as possible. However, according to Kenny Starisky from 2015, however, with every execution, there's a chance that the inmate stays alive for an extended period of time or survives the execution attempt outright. When this happens, it's known as a botched execution. Lethal injection is often praised for its effectiveness and safety, being known for quick and painless executions. However, it's actually the most dangerous execution method in the United States. The average botched execution rate is 3.15%, according to the Death Penalty Information Center, with almost every method falling under that baseline. Lethal injection is the only method with a percentage over the average at 7.12%, which means that 7.12% of every lethal injection ends up being botched. When execution is botched, it can cause severe damage to the inmate's body while they're still conscious and aware enough to feel pain. For example, in 1990, Jesse Joseph Tafero was sentenced to death by electric chair. During the execution, and this is a direct quote, 6-inch flames erupted from Tafero's head and 3 joules of power were required to stop his breathing. Jesse's case is very far from the worst and very far from the only one. The Death Penalty Information Center has many other examples of executions going wrong and what can happen when they're botched. The bottom line is, contention 2 is the 8th Amendment guarantees that no American should ever suffer cruel and unusual punishments according to the Bill of Rights. Allowing inmates to endure such a level of pain clearly violates the cruel and unusual clause. And that brings us to contention 3, the economic toll of capital punishment. With the 8th Amendment in mind, there is no viable reason as to why capital punishment in its current form should stay the way that it is. A feasible alternative to capital punishment would be a life sentence in federal prison. It could be argued that the operating cost for prison and the price to house an additional inmate for an extended period of time would be higher than the cost of execution. However, according to Kenny Starisky, it is much cheaper to house an inmate in prison until he dies than it is for the state to execute him. This is due to a number of factors. It's due to the cost of lethal injection. It's due to the cost of power with electric chair, and it's due to the amount of time that it takes until the inmate is actually executed, because an inmate can be on death row for a very, very long time until they're actually executed. And in conclusion, the solution here is quite obvious: to prevent these violations of ethics from continuing to happen, to prevent the continuation of state-sponsored murder that often goes horribly wrong and causes severe damage, then the death penalty must be abolished.
Good job.
How was my time?
3:16. Alright. My first speaker over here, you are ready to go whenever.
Hi. Today our group is going to affirm the long understood claim that the death penalty is constitutional and moral. We will prove that the abolition of the death penalty is a naive, short-sighted stance to take, and on a much more nuanced problem. The framework for our debate is the protection of justice, where since drafting our Constitution, this great nation has promised justice for all. Today we will argue that abolishing the death penalty will not reduce any injustices within the current criminal system. We will also argue that the death penalty should be reformed to be used exclusively in extreme cases, rather than be completely abolished. At its core, abolition is unjust. We hope to prove through this debate that the abolition of the death penalty will ultimately result in further injustices, not only in the criminal system, but in the lives of the American people at large. For our first contention, to begin, abolishing capital punishment will not reduce the injustices within the current criminal system, and by some metrics, its abolition will only further contribute to exacerbate them. As Claire Andre said, an ethical scholar at Santa Clara University, any unfair application of the death penalty is the basis for extending its application, not abolishing it. Some justice, however unequal, is better than no justice, however equal. If the death penalty is abolished, the criminals who would otherwise be sentenced to capital punishment would be sentenced to life in prison, further contributing to the overcrowded prisons, gang violence within the prison walls, and the horrific conditions that prisoners have to endure. A quote from Charles Stimson, a senior legal fellow and deputy director at Mies Center for Legal Justice Judicial Studies. But for the death penalty to be applied fairly, we must strive to make the criminal justice system work as it was intended. We should all agree that all defendants in capital cases should have contempt and zealous lawyers representing them at all stages in the trial and in its appeals process. Seeing the death penalty as a purely broken system on its own is a dangerously short-sighted mentality. Many of its underlying issues are ones that permeate the justice system as a whole, and as such, abolishing the death penalty will do nothing to prevent those injustices. In fact, capital cases are often handled with more care and evaluation than any other case. Considerable effort is made in capital cases to avoid convicting and executing the wrong person, much more so than in non-capital cases. Without the death penalty, the number of wrongfully convicted people who will spend the rest of their lives in prison for crimes they didn't commit will increase. The chances that a person will be proven innocent are much higher if that person is given the death sentence instead of a life sentence, said by Miriam in 2021. Acknowledging that mistake can occasionally occur in capital cases does not render the death penalty unjust any more than serving a life sentence in prison. More mistakes can and will be made in non-capital cases, as they don't have as severe criteria to meet, causing more innocent people to be wrongfully punished. Those people are either killed, put in jail, without them genuinely being the ones who are guilty. Contention 2. The death penalty should be reformed to be used in exclusively extreme cases. There is a difference between mass murderers, terrorists, sadistic serial killers, contract killers, or other paid assassins, and those who committed crimes for circumstances. Those who murder others for purposes of enjoyment, profit, gain, or just for no reason at all must be allocated with the punishment that is deserving of their crimes. We must recognize that the economic circumstances drive people to commit crimes, and we should allow and encourage lesser criminals to pay for the crimes and give them real opportunities to start fresh, said by Blecker in 2014. Robbery, burglary, and drugs should not elevate murder into capital felony murder. If we drop economic crimes such as robbery and drugs as aggravating circumstances, racial disparity will drop significantly. Two of the biggest arguments for the abolition of death penalty are that it's unjust and has targeted innocents. Whether these may be true, these are not condemning reasons to completely rid the death penalty. By reforming the definition of who should be allowed to be sentenced to the death penalty, we remove the risk of systematic injustices and significantly decrease the percentage of possibility for wrongful conviction. Death penalty should be exclusively reserved for those who are cruel to the core, those who are sick and take pleasure in torture or murder, etc. such as mass murderers, terrorists, and serial killers. There should also be undying and irrefutable evidence proving a convict's guilt with an overwhelmingly unanimous jury with no doubt and total certainty in their sentence. Arguing that the death penalty should be abolished due to the injustices that come with it is not a constructive solution. If we applied this theory to any form of injustice, the world would never improve. Simply eradicating a broken system does
30
not fix
seconds.
the injustices. Thank you.
Water. Nice.
All right, so our first speakers, we will begin our 2-minute crossfire. I will start your timer now.
So William mentioned about how some unequal justice is better than no equal justice at all. I would say that overall, when it comes to the death penalty, there's always a chance that there is a chance for all forms of policing to go wrong. But when it comes to the death penalty and human lives are on the line, that's definitely a more severe case for any amount of something to go wrong.
Wait. I'm so sorry.
You're
I'm
good.
confused.
Talk about how.
That was not a question. That was a statement.
Oh, sorry. It was a question. Okay. So how exactly would... Can we start over?
No, just power through, power through.
So how exactly would being sentenced to life in prison be a less severe punishment than execution?
Well, being sentenced to life in prison for like people who have committed stuff like petty theft and stuff like that is more humane because they would be just wrongfully killed or just killed in general. They can really have a chance to start over versus getting rid of the death penalty and putting like mass murders in prison to quote unquote start over.